Good evening. Hope everyone's doing okay. Hope everyone is doing okay. I am going to talk a little bit about AI. I had an opinion not too long ago about AI, and maybe like about a year or maybe 2 years ago. I actually have no idea how long ago. It was a while ago, and my opinion at the time was I could see it being, relatively used as kind of any tool that we look at today. There's arguments of like, people look at how like photography kind of shook up the portrait industry, and then digital art kind of mixed up the traditional industry, and whatever kind of disruption here and there we can contribute to. And I kind of want to talk about my opinion about it now, because I think what is interesting is I think that a lot of times people look at these new innovations, new industries as opportunities to begin the the next generation or the next evolution of creation or opportunity and inspiration. And I think that's still relatively true with something that is perceived as AI, but I don't think it's anywhere as close as people are expecting it to be. And part of what makes me think this is a few things. Um, but let me just start off by saying this. I think that AI, as it stands, of me making this video, and who knows, a few years from now, I'll have a different opinion with um, more examples of change of the tool, uh, allegedly. But I don't know. I have no idea what that will look like until the time comes, right? But as of now, it is very clearly a brute forced acquired application, meaning that it is pretty much scouring the internet to acquire all of what it knows, and it has already reached that limit at some capacity, and so it can only get marginally better, um, as far as I can tell. And what I mean by this is that the internet has a finite amount of information, quite a lot of it, but the information isn't necessarily as novel as one might think, meaning the vast majority of it is pretty generic, pretty average. And what these language models end up doing is just kind of discovering what those averages are. Whether it's visual, whether it's writing, whatever the heck you're trying to do. And so the vast majority of people won't be able to really get much out of the tool other than a couple cool images. And a good amount of people might get some really cool stuff, but they are going to be ill equipped with what I believe is actually the value that has always been true for many years. I've been doing this thing called art. And one of those things is specifically the ability to understand what makes good art in the first place. Basically, having good taste or acquiring taste in the first place. And this is one of those things that is really hard to acquire without some good practice, and specifically, kind of the practice you would get from working amongst industries. Because when you start to work with the ability to create all this really cool imagery, but it's not being pressured against, working environments and people who have done it longer than you have and can give you a bit of this insight of what they've discovered and so forth and so on. With AI art specifically, um, you won't really have those experiences as much because let's say you get into an opportunity for a project and they're like, damn, dude, you're fucking awesome. But then they give you some feedback. They give you like a little bit of like, hey, can you make this have a little bit of a orange? And without changing much of it, right? And if you are incapable of understanding the nuance of what they meant by whatever they said, like, hey, add some orange. Maybe there were some very specific, explicit social or cultural reasons for it that are sensitive to the people you're getting feedback from. It's really hard to do that with AI. And it's really hard to essentially push nuances, and sometimes nuances is what makes or breaks a project, right? It's the thing that makes it tip over the edge and become incredibly novel and now widely accepted or potentially a mega hit amongst um, you know, general audiences. And so you won't have that experience because you'll get to that level. And once you're asked to kind of make any iteration or any movement in any other vector or any kind of other direction that you've just never experienced, then you'll ultimately be hamstrung and then most likely let go because they will realize you can't do this. Cool, you made a really cool starting image, but ultimately we can't do anything with this. Like we need to maneuver around and understand nuances. We can't always be going with the first image. And this isn't uniquely at the fault of AI either, for what it's worth. I actually have seen this happen with projects that are like, I've seen this with like students who overwatch a few tutorials and build a portfolio around just watching tutorials. And then when they, try to apply for gigs and they get asked questions about how they created their things, the irony of like they watched this tutorial to learn how to build this really cool scene, but they didn't understand like the mechanics of why you should build it this way in the first place. And so they get stuck in interview questions. And worse over, they get hired, let's say, and now they're, in a situation where they don't know how to navigate because they've never really had to. They just followed a really incredible tutorial. I teach a lot of students this principle. I say, I'm not here just to show you how to paint. I'm trying to teach you how to become a great artist. Because being a great artist isn't about just painting well. It's about understanding what people like about what you're painting, like they like about what you're designing, and having them find what they want, their vision within your artwork. And if you're out here just trying to make really cool imagery, then there are alternate avenues that I think you can venture if you're like an artist, but most likely like Illustrator, most likely a self-proclaimed artist. Like maybe you can make a good income just selling your own art. But at the end of the day, it's really a matter of can you navigate the nuances? And I think AI art and AI quote unquote artists really lack this ability. And I don't see any meaningful way for them to learn this because under my circumstances, when I was hired and I was told, hey, we like to see more horns in these character designs we're doing. And it's because we're trying to make it feel more Greek mythology and there's like minotaurs. I can immediately understand kind of the goal that might be made. I remember one time I got feedback from my great concept art lead, Cecil Kim. He once told me my artwork looked too futuristic. And I was drawing like Greek mythology looking stuff, I thought, right? And it was bizarre to me because I was like, futuristic? This shit looks old. What are you talking about, futuristic? And he was like, no. Like, it looks like 100 or maybe 1,000, like it looks like a few hundred years into the future during the era of Greek, like the Greek era, and then think of a few hundred years into the future, which I think was Roman. I forget, actually, I don't remember. But it's not like Back to the Future. It's like future within the context of history. And that is really nuanced. And what it required me to do is to really research, understand at a principle level what it meant to make Greek looking aesthetic. In fact, that is my greatest skill that I get hired for, is not my ability to draw well, but to hear what people say, right? And then know how to research it, know how to present it, know how to articulate what they might have been looking for, and describe it in such a way that they have the ability to give me really good feedback. I think that's another aspect of it, is to be able to help those who are not artists, because people that hire us are usually not going to be other artists. They're going to be like producers, designers, directors, but maybe not artists. And being able to teach them some principled ideas of what it means to do what you do, and also give them opportunities and descriptors to be able to give you meaningful feedback, you know, through your art, through just kind of education during criticism, is an incredibly valuable tool. And a lot of it is valued whenever I do it. I am almost always complimented for this ability to kind of like hear what was told to me and then make a reasonable adjustment to it, and be able to kind of convey it backwards. And I don't know if AI artists or even AI has that ability to have that true human connection that allows me to hear and feel what people are trying to get at. You know, like if I would say, hey, I want like to make something like a Saturday morning cartoon, like from the 90s, there's more that goes to that than just making it look like a Saturday morning cartoon. There's like the feeling of what it was like to wake up in the morning. There's the feeling of what it was like to live during that time. And if I have no understanding as a person who didn't grow up during that era, which I did grow up, but let's just say I didn't, then I'm going to have a harder time. It's going to be an uphill battle. But once I do that research and do that studies, and actually put the work in, then I have the ability to use my artistic skill to then demonstrate these ideas visually. And again, I think if you're an AI quote unquote artist, like maybe you could do all the research aspect of it. Maybe you can find better words to use, but it's gonna still be much harder to just try to have this machine convey a visual image that understands that nuance, versus if you just understand light, color, values, anatomy, perspective, design. These are just tools too, right? But these are tools that actuate my ideas. They don't limit me. You know, I'm not living. They're creating unbounded limits. I have the ability to do whatever I want visually because I spent the time and years training how to do that. But like I said, those soft skills of like understanding nuance, researching, this is highly valuable. And again, part of my criticism is how do you learn that if you're never really given those opportunities? Because the tool itself won't allow you to get past that. And like I said, this is not unique to AI art. Like I see this in young artists' portfolios as well, where like I said, they might duplicate too much from a tutorial. But at least the difference with that is I can critique why you aren't able to present your ideas effectively. Hey, you watch too many tutorials. You need to practice anatomy, forms, perspective, all the things I just described earlier. I can look at what you've done and understand where your skills lack. But if you are using a tool that kind of does the drawing for you, I mean, how do I give you a critique? Maybe use more adjectives in your AI model? How do I paint over and demonstrate to you that your ideas are wrong unless I know how to do it myself, right? And I think that aspect of it is missing. And as mentioned before, the amount of data that is available has been met because the novelty is still in the hands of folks like myself and other artists and illustrators who've really spent time mastering this craft. We have the ability to pivot. We can look at the world affairs and digest that information more meaningfully, more nuanced, right? It's not just based off of a larger average. It also includes my personal experience as a father, friend, husband. These things add up, what it felt like to accomplish certain goals in my life, that contributes to my ability to make certain kinds of art. My experience, seeing the world and exploring all these awesome places and meeting awesome people and hearing their stories influences new stories for me, you know? Now, on the ethical aspect of AI, I think that argument is still pretty sound, to be quite frank. I don't know if those will be ever resolved at a legal level, because it is a hard fight and it's an uphill battle, because a lot of these larger companies are invested in AI. So I think it's one of those things that's just going to be a challenge to overcome from a legal standpoint. But even if there is a day that the ethical argument is off the table, I think a couple of the earlier arguments I just made still would hold. And what's unfortunate is that I think a lot of people believe that this is not true. They think that these tools are truly replacing them. But in reality, what I think is actually going to be happening is a lot of these corporations, a lot of these larger companies are going to realize immediately that they don't have the actual skill sets to be able to create the things that they're looking to create. Because even at the end of the day, if you created an incredible AI tool that could understand nuances and maybe understand a lot of the kinds of criticism just given, you still need to give it input, because that's the same way we operate. And these models are driven by what they've seen and learned from what we've done and how we operate. So these types of individuals are going to still be incredibly valuable. And I highly encourage many of you who are listening to not give up on the dream of learning how to draw, paint, and become an incredible concept artist, illustrator, or what have you. I don't think these jobs are going anywhere. But what I might encourage you to do and to understand is that you might be able to start to add more skills to your roster, because there's so much more tools to learn, and there are so many more actual tools to make cool stuff, from like Blender to Unreal. You can learn how to do some basic coding and making interactive experiences. Visual effects is a lot more accessible. You can probably make something that looks like it might have been made by a smaller visual effects studio all by yourself. I've seen it happen amongst my peers. And these are just one or two people that are doing these types of things. It's pretty crazy. And I think that that's not exclusive to just a small group of people. I think everyone who's listening to this can do the same, can be the creators of their own destiny. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this new perspective on AI. I think I could do these like 15, 20-minute videos more frequently. And I enjoy doing them, to be honest. It's very therapeutic. I'm here doing something I ought to be doing, which is painting more often. I give my students an assignment. I gave one of my students recently, he's probably listening again, to just draw consistently. It's a really helpful way to get good at anything within art, whether you're not sure where to start or how to start. Just start making stuff, Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. I have a couple more stuff that I would like to talk about, but I'll save that for tomorrow. I'm going to continue working and then go to sleep. Hope you guys have a good one. Good night.